morning, everyone. We will start the next report out. Welcome to the lab team. We are the lab mistake proofing team. This is our agenda, and we will each take approximately 4 minutes to present. This is our lovely team. From left to right, Penny Hope, Stacey Smith-Coleman, myself, Carol Gregorick, Jamie Callahan, and Dr. Brian Geller. Our project aim was to reduce errors in chemistry results in the lab that are passed on to the clinician caring for a patient, adversely affecting the patient. So the errors are actual errors that are occurring in the results, and they end up being passed on to a clinician and as a result affect the patient. Our tack time in the lab was 31 seconds based on 2,500 tests in 21.5 hours. So they have a minimum of 2,500 tests in a day, and every 31 seconds there needs to be a test rolling off their machine. We identified 100 abnormal results per day. Every one of those abnormal results requires review and release by the lab staff. Abnormal result checking and release required standard work development, and interruptions were significant by both people and phones. As we observed, the interruptions were a big part of how things happened at that station. We did see that we had some rework in numerous steps in the process, such as labeling tubes and adjusting for lower tube levels by doing short samples. We felt that standard work for identifying and addressing errors was required.
So our pre-Kaizen value stream map for this process within the lab just looks at the process steps that we were tracking and trying to make improvements. You can see our starbursts identified areas for improvement, like labeling, the creation of standard work, reducing phone and verbal interruptions, and some of the chaos that caused at the particular area of the lab that we were looking at, the chemistry desk. So pre-Kaizen, our lead time was 13 minutes and 6 seconds, and our value add was 65%, non-value add was 35%. Our Virginia Mason Institute mistake proofing assignment form is where we identified our high-risk process that we were choosing to look at. So as Carol pointed out, it was the release of a wrong chemistry result into the hands of the practitioner, altering patient care or delaying or altering diagnosis. So some of the contributing factors that we thought that were causing these errors were, as we said, interruptions of the chemistry tech doing this vitally important work while she or he was checking abnormal results, varied work routines, rework within the process, something that was termed the 1,000-yard stare. So when you're continually checking and looking at a computer screen, are you seeing what you're really seeing, or are you just really seeing without thinking critically about it? So no standard work, and then some of the chaos in that environment. Pre-mistake proofing, we thought our level of inspection was about a 2 or 3, where it was end of the line inspection or self-inspection with judgment within the step. And our defect rate, pre-mistake proofing, we had 6 wrong chemistry results released into the hands of the clinician out of 106,000 tests in an 11-month period. So that's a defect rate of 0.00074381%. A very low defect rate, but for those 6 patients, significant. So some of the ways that we looked at to improve our mistake-prone situation was reducing rework with filling tubes, fixing some problems that they had with labels. A really big one was reducing the interruptions by phone and by people, avoiding the 1,000-yard stare as well. And one of the visual controls that we looked at will be described a little bit later in some of the pictures. So the rest of this form just goes through our requirements for the Virginia Mason Institute. Post-Kaizen, we thought our level of mistake proofing had moved from that 2-3 to a 3-4, where we've got self-inspection with judgment as well as successive checks. And we're happy to report that our defect rate since implementing our first improvement in the lab on February 27th has been 0 out of 146,000 tests. We've released no wrong chemistry results. So our percent improvement was 100% for our defect rate.
Okay, so once we had outlined, as Stacey said, the value stream map, and we saw some opportunities, we did some data collection on, one of them was the number of interruptions. And this chart is just outlining specifically at the chemistry desk where they were releasing results. And what had happened is there were phone interruptions, people looking for results. There were also people interruptions coming and asking questions. And in this time period, it was in 150 minutes, there was 102 interruptions to the one person who is taking chemistry results off and then supposed to be releasing those results out. This also shows, so we did some data collection, and we also had the staff do some data collection. And so this page just shows some of the types of calls that they were getting, you know, what was being asked, that sort of thing. So they collected data pre-Kaizen as well. And yeah. So on page, yeah, that's just more data. So this is just a chart showing pre-Kaizen of a number of interruptions every 60 minutes that person who is releasing those results was receiving. So anywhere from 30 interruptions per minute per person to you know, to 5 or 10, so quite significant. So one of the first things that we tried to do was reduce obviously the number of phone interruptions. So currently the chemistry desk was receiving a lot of the calls, and one of the ideas was to maybe have that phone moved so that the unit clerk could be the one receiving those calls instead of having the chemistry person receiving all those calls. So these are some of, once we implemented that, these are actually the unit clerk, once we did it, the unit clerk took some data and she started receiving more calls, which is basically what we wanted. So that's on the next couple pages. Yeah. So on page, yeah, 16. So post-Kaizen, we went in, and this is just a graph showing what had happened. So post-Kaizen, we went in, we did some time observations, and what we found is post-Kaizen, there was only 2 people interruptions in 60 minutes, and 1 phone interruption in 60 minutes after we had changed that phone. So quite significant from where we went. On page 17 and 18, so these are our target sheets. So obviously, the biggest thing that we wanted to reduce was the number of defects that were being passed on to that patient. And that would be, you know, reducing the interruptions was one, as well as the rework of tubes. A lot of times what was happening is the tubes weren't getting filled properly initially, and it was causing rework for that chemistry person down the road. So if we could reduce that amount of rework, then we would hopefully reduce their interruptions in their work as well. And then as well, Stacey mentioned that 1,000-yard stare. We weren't sure if that was an issue or not, but again, we just wanted to see what was happening. And then page 19, I'll go to. So an idea board was implemented, and actually the staff, I think, seems to be very positive. There's lots of ideas up there, and that seems to be working quite well. The next page is some of the ideas that, again, was to reduce the number of interruptions. There was lots of phones happening, people talking, and they're trying to release results. So the end stage is to get to no interruptions. There was some barcode issues as far as the labels not sticking. So that was causing rework, and that's been taken care of. And as well as the rework of tubes, frequent samples, just doing a lot of work and collection. And then the last one was basically getting that unit clerk, focusing that work more where the unit clerk could be, and then so that the chemistry tech is free to release those results and focus on those results.
Good morning, everyone. We're doing well with time, so I have to talk slow. Okay, so what we've done is we actually, with the lab staff, created some standard work for checking abnormal results. So you can see we've listed a 5-step process here. And then this just depicts the standard work just in an algorithm format. It's the same thing. The staff were all trained in this process for checking the abnormal work or the abnormal results. So the staff in the lab conducted a 5S evaluation, and you could see the pre-5S score was 2.1. This is the 5S team in the lab, and they look like they're having a lot of fun doing this. So this is pre-5S. You can see that nothing is really labeled there, and it's a little bit cluttered. Post 5S, you can see it's all nice and neat, and we've got labels on everything. This is again post 5S, the drawers are all labeled. And inside the drawers have been 5S as well, so they're all labeled and neatly organized. So the post 5S evaluation that was conducted, they went from a 2.1 up to a 3.97. So this is a pre-Kaizen spaghetti diagram. And this is where the lab techs are walking. So you can see there's quite a bit of movement going on in that little area. This is also pre-Kaizen, but it was taken at a different time of the day. And so this is post-Kaizen. So you can see there's the amount of walking has been greatly reduced. Now I must say that we actually didn't do anything to focus on reducing the walking, but we are assuming that with the implementation of the 5S and with the reduced interruptions, that it may have impacted the amount of walking they're doing. So this is post-Kaizen again. So one of the things that we've done to try to reduce the interruptions, the Chemtech is at this little area here. So maintenance installed this plexiglass, and this stop sign was put up there too, because when you're walking in, it's like people are going directly to this area. So this has helped, I think, with to be able to reduce those interruptions. And again, this is on, there's another stop sign kind of behind the computer as well, so when the Chemtechs are actually checking the results, they're not being interrupted. And now I'm gonna turn it over to Brian.
That was our little hand-on for me. So we've done process improvements, and we've improved the report out time as well. So these are post-Kaizen results. You see we took from 6 in 800,000 to 0 in 150,000. So we would have expected at least one error by now if we're getting 0, 8 per or 6 per 800,000. So we haven't had our expected errors, so we say we're 0, that's 100% success. We had a 0 target for our interruptions. We almost made it. We had 1 interruption in our observations for every 60 minutes, so a 97.5% improvement. The rework for the lab label, or the lab chemistry, is that sometimes the tubes aren't filled quite properly. Our target there was 10%, and the reason for that is because you can't always get all the blood you want, right? So it really is probably never going to be 0. And we managed to reduce that to 22% with an improvement of 27.8% improvement on that. So, and with the 1,000-yard stare, which is just a little off the screen, the staff, after talking to them more, they actually kiboshed that. They didn't think that was actually an issue. So we'll go to the next page, I guess. Can't remember what I was supposed to say here. I think this one's really good. The real one that we want to emphasize on this one is the lead time. The lead time went from 13 minutes and 6 seconds to 42 seconds. So we like to take all the credit for that. Our our target was 5 minutes, but I do have to say that when we went in time for 42 seconds, there was one machine down, so they were, instead of working off of 2 machines, which would likely increase the lead time, they were only working off of 1 machine. But we really can't see that the lead time would increase by more than 4 minutes just because a second machine is running. So we think we've met our target there as well. I think that's it on that page. We did time observations to prove all of our data at the end of this. So this is the visual proof that we actually made it to 42 seconds. And we have our post-Kaizen value stream map, which is much reduced and simplified. And I think shows a value added time of 71%, which we're really quite impressed with, because not only did we manage to cut the lead time to 42 seconds, we actually still managed to increase the value add with that. So, because our pre-Kaizen value add, I think, was 65%. So our newspaper, I really have to slow down now, I suppose. So there's just a few things left on our newspaper. One is the machine errors. This one actually is an IT issue. We're waiting now to get IT in to help work through that. This is where the machine, to a large extent, will verify its own results, and if they're normal and an expected normal, they'll be released, or if they're an expected abnormal, they'll be released sort of automatically. That's waiting for IT to be able to devote some resources for that. The stat results checking done differently. That's a standard work that we've asked the lab to continue to work on, and for the 90-day report out, that's the target time on that. Chemtech, did we correct the spelling error? Yeah, we did. Okay, so what we do is that what's happening with a lot of the interruptions is the tech wasn't sort of finishing verifying one set of abnormal results before they're being called away to do something else. We wanted to introduce some standard work around finishing verifying the abnormal results before you move on to another task. We're not finished doing that. The lab, we have a target time that again for the 90-day report out. And then this one is, the last one is 13 here, is where when it comes to reporting that the error has actually been released, or the error has actually been released to the clinician. There's no sort of standard process around that. Right now it comes on an incident form. We really want to simplify that. We really want to make that easier for the techs to report, and in a perfect world it would be escalated up to, I suppose, a near sort of stop the line event every time it happens, so that it's sort of immediately investigated and gets bumped right up to people that have the power to fix it at the instant we become aware of it. We have done some work there, but it's not done. So, workshop summary, this is what we learned. Involve the staff so that they feel they're part of the solution. Small changes make a huge difference, like moving the phone. Pay attention to the human element. Align the skills with the job that's required, and data, because sometimes we made some assumptions that just did not get borne out by the data. So that was an interesting learning for me. Well, we want to thank, there's our list. I want to thank my team for putting up with me and dragging me through this, because I probably wasn't as much help as I should have been. We want to thank the lab staff, Lenny and Jerry in the lab, the KTO support, the 5S team, Val Middlebrook, and our sponsor, John.